El siguiente programa es ajeno a Vea Canal. Cualquier eventualidad es responsabilidad del mismo.
Gracias amigos de Vea Canal por estar en sintonía. Karina González de Rothman es mi nombre. Esta es una oportunidad valiosa para la gloria del Eterno. Hoy es 29 de junio del año 2018 y me acompaña en el set la licenciada Victoria Sandoval. Gracias Vicky por estar conmigo.
Muchas buenas tardes.
Gracias.
Buenos días a todos.
La oportunidad que estamos teniendo la mañana de hoy es valiosa, es la voz de muchos guatemaltecos que quisieran hablar con el señor Bill Browder, un hombre muy valiente que ha alzado su voz en nombre de la violación de los derechos humanos a nivel mundial. Víctima del señor Vladimir Putin, siendo uno de los mayores inversores en Rusia, luego de 4 años del gobierno de Vladimir Putin, pues simplemente es iniciado a ser extorsionado por ese gobierno porque gente muy afín, según cuentan las diferentes versiones legales que están subidas en todas las redes sociales y de acuerdo a nuestras investigaciones, el señor Vladimir Putin junto con su grupo de personas afines han estado o han hecho tortura y extorsión a muchos empresarios para poder tener assets, para poder tener acciones de estas empresas. Lamentablemente, el abogado del señor Bill Browder en Rusia, el Sergei Magnitsky, fue puesto en prisión, en muchas prisiones, y muere torturado en el año más o menos 2006. 2008. Él nos lo va a comentar a continuación. Así que es una oportunidad valiosa la del día de hoy en la mañana, amigos televidentes, poder contar con la presencia vía Skype con el señor Bill Browder, al cual le doy la bienvenida a este canal, Vea Canal. Well, you're welcome, Bill Browder, to this channel. Thank you for the opportunity.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Gracias. Okay. We're going to start the first question, if it's okay with you.
Please.
Muy bien.
Our first question,
Victoria Sandoval is with us. We're going to ask you the first question. How it was born the Helsinki Commission? Can you tell us about, knowing that our country is new about knowing all the things that are happening in the international politics, and we're starting to know all the things.
So the Helsinki Commission was set up during the time that the United States was fighting with the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union, at a certain point, had a big meeting with the President of the United States, and they promised to not abuse human rights anymore. And that meeting led to something called the Helsinki Agreement or the Helsinki Accords. And the United States set up something called the Helsinki Commission inside the US Congress to make sure that the Soviet Union was living up to its promises. And this Helsinki Commission continues to operate until today, and it looks at, very specifically, at human rights and human rights treatment of Russia and Russian behavior around the world.
So this Helsinki Commission now includes not only Russia and Europe.
So the Helsinki Commission is focused on Russia, But for example, we had a situation which I think many people in Guatemala are familiar with, where the Bitkoff family, who was being pursued by the Russian government, Vladimir Putin and his government are chasing this family around the world. And when the Bitkoff family ended up in Guatemala, and the Putin regime was able to convince CICIG, and it was able to convince other organs of Guatemalan law enforcement to prosecute the Bitkoff family, then all of a sudden Guatemala became part of the discussion inside of the U.S. Helsinki Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Our first question, because our people has to know what is the Helsinki Commission. And I think Victoria wants to make you the second question.
Hello, Bill. We would like to know which is the relation between the Helsinki Commission and the Global Magnitsky.
The sound is not coming through clearly again.
Okay.
Can you speak again?
Okay, I will tell you the question. Which is the relation between the Helsinki Commission and the Global Magnitsky Act?
So I should explain what the Global Magnitsky Act is. The Global Magnitsky Act is a piece of legislation that I was responsible for bringing to Congress, which is named after my lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, who was tortured and murdered in a Russian prison in 2009 for exposing crimes of the Putin regime. I brought this idea to Washington a number of years ago, and I said that the United States should impose asset freezes and visa bans on the people who killed Sergei Magnitsky and who do similar types of crimes anywhere in the world. And that became known as the Global Magnitsky Act. And the Global Magnitsky Act was originated inside of the Helsinki Commission. It was members of the Helsinki Commission that came up with this piece of legislation. And this piece of legislation now applies to bad people everywhere in the world. The U.S. government is adding people to the Magnitsky list on a regular basis. And my hope is that it becomes a very strong tool to go after corrupt government officials in countries that are ruining the lives of their people.
Could you please tell us to whom and why the Global Magnitsky Act might be applied?
Could you repeat the question one more time at the very end, just because I didn't hear the last part of it?
To whom and why Global Magnitsky might be applied?
To whom can the law be applied?
So the Global Magnitsky Act applies to two types of people. Those people who participate in gross human rights abuse. So if somebody is involved in torture or murder or similar types of things, that's one category. And then the Global Magnitsky Act also applies to people who are involved in kleptocracy or high-level corruption, or who financially benefit from human rights abuse. And so there are roughly 60 or so people who are sanctioned at this moment in time by the United States. And some of those people, most of those people are sanctioned because they were doing terrible things in terms of, there were people who were selling organs in Pakistan and people who were involved in torture of or murder of Chinese dissidents or Russian dissidents. And then there are also people who are involved in high-level corruption. There's an Israeli person who was involved in all sorts of terrible corruption in Africa who's on this list. And so these are the two categories.
Okay, thank you.
I want to ask you more specific. For example, in Guatemala, we're living things that maybe are unexplained. But in name of justice, here in Guatemala, people who administrate justice are being torturing and extorting civilians, politics, I said in name of justice, but also business people are being torturing and extorting by CICIG, who are an experiment. It is an experiment of the UN. You know the story. I know you know the story. But in name of justice, lots, I can say thousands of people here in Guatemala are being tortured and extorted by CICIG, judges and all the people who work in MP, that is the public ministry, and everything is done because the fad is to talk about corruption. But here in our country, the thing is that people who are against corruption are the first corrupts that are making a lot of money, and I have the information, and I have to make it public. I know this interview is going to be seen by lots and millions of people, and I have to tell you that business people told me that if they don't give money to 3 guys that are in charge of asking money so they can go out of jail, they're gonna be there for the rest of their lives, and their legal process, or they're not flowing away. And they said that Arturo Aguilar, who works in CICIG, they also said that a guy that ends his name with Marroquin, that works in a printed newspaper, important printed newspaper here in Guatemala, and I forgot the other name of the guy, they're asking, the business people said, they're asking for money, and they're asking to put the money in an account in the US. Look what tragic and important this is. And they're asking to put the money on a NGO in United States. So my specific question is, can these people from United Nations can also be legal prosecuted by the Magnitsky Act?
Well, if these allegations can be proven, they're extremely grave and extremely serious and lead one to very, very dark conclusions. But I would argue that if this type of corruption is true and going on right now in Guatemala, the Guatemalan government should prosecute these people first and foremost. And if the Guatemalan government can't prosecute them because the system doesn't work, then of course, then these international mechanisms like the Magnitsky Act should be applied. The story that you're telling me is very disturbing. It doesn't surprise me if it's true, because I've seen how terribly abused the Bitkoff family has been by CICIG in Guatemala, working together with the Russians. I've seen the same type of thing happening on a widespread basis in Russia, and so and in Russia, people who have done this, in the case of Sergei Magnitsky, are now on the Magnitsky list, and they're very unhappy. So I don't know the specific facts that you refer to, and those are extremely disturbing if true. But I can say that the abuse of the justice system by officials is one of the worst things that can happen, because if the people who are supposed to be protecting the law are not and are violating the law, then that creates chaos and nihilism in a country.
Yeah. We have a big problem. The thing is that this experiment, United Nations experiment named CICIG, that has 10 years living here in Guatemala, is not doing real justice. And our judges and our fiscales and the government and all the people, they're afraid, because these people that works in CICIG, they have immunity, and they depend, and they have a lot of money from the rest of the countries in the whole world. So how can we loud our voices and tell the whole world that this horrible experiment named CICIG is doing disasters in human rights violations?
What I can tell you, I'm not an expert on all the other cases, but I've become a big expert on the case of CICIG's illegal and unjust persecution of the Bitkoff family. And if this case if other cases are similar to this case, then there's a massive problem. But what I can say about this case, the Bitkoff case, is that I've analyzed the documents. I've looked at the relationship between CICIG and the Russians, and CICIG's conduct is clearly unjust, unlawful, and abusive. And I will make sure, to the best of my abilities, that they're not allowed to destroy the lives of the Bitkoff family, who I'm working hard to protect. And I know that they will not let this family go free. They're doing everything in their power to try to stop it. And I have a lot of allies in Washington who are going to do everything in our power to make sure they don't succeed.
The Bitkoff
is only one of the lots of cases we have here in our country. What they do is to torture and extort. They extort people, families. They're violating families' rights. They're destroying families. They're torturing emotionally, physically, and also financially, because they're living split away of families. So we have real problems here in Guatemala. It seems Washington is starting to understand, but they don't really know the big problem, because all these groups, left groups, apparently Democrats, who control everything, the legal system in Guatemala, they have good lovers in Washington. So they're giving fake news. The ones who live here in Guatemala, we that live here in Guatemala, we're fighting legally against this experiment, ugly experiment that is only violating human rights. I think our friend here, Vicky Sandoval, has another question for you.
Yes. Bill, could you please tell us which are the consequences for those who are sanctioned over the Magnitsky Act?
So this is a good question. The Magnitsky Act does three important things. It publicly names the names of human rights violators and kleptocrats. It puts them on a visa sanctions list, which means they can't travel to the United States. And it freezes their assets and puts their name on the U.S. Treasury sanctions list. And while these are all U.S. actions, they have huge international significance. First, because if you get put on the Treasury sanctions list, it doesn't matter where you hold your money, no bank in the world will want to do business with you. Similarly, if you're put on the U.S. visa ban list, many other countries that demand visas won't allow you in as well. And so it's not a perfect mechanism of justice for human rights violators, but it is a mechanism of justice that does cause pain, particularly to those people who do terrible things, steal money, and then keep their money in the West, thinking that it's safe. And so it is something, and we know how much people who are put on the sanctions list hate it by their reaction when they get put on those sanctions lists.
A picture with you 2 days ago, a judge named Erika Ifan, who is in charge of the Bitcoin judgment here in Guatemala. I know you know of her. In hours of work, more or less 1:30 p.m.,
I'm sorry, you're going to have to speak closer into the microphone because the sound quality went down.
Okay. 2 days ago, that's okay now? 2 days ago, a judge named Erika Ifan, she's a female, she had a lunch in our times. Instead of being in the place where she has to work, she was on a restaurant here in Zone 11, named Hacienda Real, Zone 11, in a place named Majadas. And we're gonna share with the public the photos, because apparently she was speaking, we don't know what, with possible lawyers who represent the government, the bank, the Russian bank that are owned mostly by the Russian government. We are afraid because lies had been gone on and out from the Erika Ifan posture and also from the CC, Corte de Constitucionalidad here in Guatemala. We have 5 different judges in that court, and 2 of them have been working right with our Constitution and with international treaties. But we have 3 of them that are working with CICIG and are working in the hand by hand with apparently Russian business here in Guatemala. We can think that it's very hard for us to know what's gonna go next on this new judgment that one of other bank in Russia is starting to build and investigate here in Guatemala against the Birkov family.
Gazprom Bank. Gazprom Bank.
Gazprom Bank, another bank, not the BTV bank that we all know about, but another new bank is starting to operate with lawyers that represent them here in Guatemala, and we know they have a new strategy to put in jail to the family named Birkov.
And so, I'm sorry, is there a question?
I want to know about your opinion, because we have a new case and we have Erika Ifan getting illegal reunions with the lawyers that represent Russians.
So, first of all, Erika Ifan.
According to the photos we have. Put the photos on the TV, for please. Poneme las fotos.
So, Erika Ifan is the judge who refused the 3 decisions of the Guatemalan court, the constitutional court, to free the Bitkovs because they had not committed any crime. So her behavior has been unusual, to say the least. The fact that she's basically been in contempt of a higher court decision. If these photographs are real, and I have no way of analyzing these photographs, but if they're real and they show that she has been having what's called ex parte meetings with lawyers of one side, in other words, meetings unofficial outside of the judicial process meetings, if that's true, that's a very serious violation, a very serious legal violation. It's also quite disturbing if another Russian entity is getting involved in the Bitkov case. But what it shows, most of all, something I've been saying all along, is that the Bitkovs haven't been prosecuted for committing any crimes in Guatemala. The Bitkovs are being persecuted by the Russian state, spending huge amounts of money on lawyers in Guatemala to ruin their lives. And nobody in Guatemala should be supporting that, and CICIG shouldn't be supporting that. And if they are, everybody who is should be called to account.
But when
To the Helsinki Commission, they lie. They act as everything is going okay here in Guatemala, and that is fake. Everything is going wrong here in Guatemala.
So I stood in front of Congress, and I gave a testimony in front of Congress alongside with Victoria and Rolando, in which I presented the very serious bad behavior of CSIG in front of the U.S. Congress. And there are a number of people in the Senate and in the House of Representatives who are not happy with what's happened to the Bitkoffs, who are not happy that they're put in jail, that Igor Bitkoff was put in jail for 19 years, and Irina and Anastasia for 14 years for passport violations. They're not happy that CSIG organized this and demand answers from CSIG, which CSIG has so far refused to give. And this is not acceptable. This type of behavior should not be funded by the United States government, and will not be funded by the United States government. And I will make the same case at the European Union, if necessary. If CSIG thinks that they can go and destroy the lives of an innocent family on behalf of Russia and continue to get money from reasonable people, they're sorely mistaken.
okay, thank you. You have
Victoria?
No, it's okay for me. Thank you very much, Bill.
Okay. Bill, I'm very honored to have you here in our channel. We fight against all odds because it's terribly, the situation here in Guatemala is terrible. A lot of people are afraid, me included, because I've been started to be threatened and instigated by the people from CSIG, by the business people here in Guatemala, who is working together with CSIG. A lot of these businessmen, that not so much, just a little bit, a few of them that work together with some kind of press, not all press, but some press, written press, and few TV channels. They are very good orchestrated, and they have their plan. But what we know is that we're fighting against odds, and we need that the U.S., that Washington, that the U.S. Senate can hear us. We need people who can open their eyes, because all of this situation is being traduced on migrants, on an economy that is broken. There's no good business here in Guatemala. We don't have peace. We're all afraid of making all these kinds of things throw out to the nations. But we need help from people like you. We need real help, because we don't know if Donald Trump, and we don't know if Mike Pence, and we don't know if Marcos Rubio, and we don't know if senators in USA have the real story, not the fake one, the real story, because fakes are in United Nations, and fake is in one institution, experimental institution named CSIC. We need help, Bill Browder. That is my last ¿cómo se dice? Súplica?
Request.
Request with you.
I'll do what I can to help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill Browder. I'm honored to have you here with me.
Thank you, Bill.
Gracias, Vicky Sandoval. Esperamos que esta entrevista haya sido de suma importancia. Tuvimos que mantenerla en secreto lo máximo posible para que no fuera boicoteada, pero sabemos que Bill Browder es una persona muy influyente en el mundo entero y que él sabrá trasladar nuestras solicitudes al mundo entero y por supuesto que al Senado norteamericano.
Así es, esperemos que ya esto empiece a dar resultados y que se pueda aplicar justicia. En mi caso como profesional, pues estoy apoyando el caso de la familia Vitkov y esperamos pronto ver que se haga justicia y que se enderecen todas las ilegalidades que se han cometido en los últimos meses.
Yo quisiera que Control ponga en pantalla las fotografías que yo le hablaba a Bill Browder. Pido disculpas por mi inglés, me gradué en el año 86 del Colegio Valleverde y obvio que de la época para acá han pasado muchos años y por supuesto que es cero fluido, pero sé que Bill Browder nos pudo haber entendido. Yo quiero trasladar las fotografías porque es una interferencia a todas luces de la jueza Erika Aifán con las reuniones con la reunión que sostuvo en este restaurante en el centro comercial Majadas, en el complejo del centro comercial Majadas. La señora de pelo largo es la jueza, hay otras fotografías que lo muestran mejor, y esto es una clara violación al debido proceso, y está sindicada, y puede ser, y hay que iniciar el proceso de investigación, y a la señora Consuelo Porras yo la emplazo públicamente para que inicie una línea de investigación. Volvé a poner la foto, porque la foto habla por sí sola. Y esta reunión se sostuvo en el restaurante Hacienda Real hace 2 días, al filo del mediodía. Y ella no puede estar hablando con abogados que puedan estar representando otras partes, porque es una clara interferencia en el debido proceso. Y muchas personas están presas por menos cosas que estas. Entonces, ¿cómo es que el Ministerio Público y la CICIG no han hecho esto público? No podemos estar jugando a justicia torcida y a selectividad de casos. Y el SOS es para el señor Mike Pence, para el señor Donald Trump, para el Senado de Estados Unidos, para si queda algo digno en Naciones Unidas. Si es que quedase algo digno en Naciones Unidas, dejen de estar sometiendo este país a tortura y extorsión. Porque los empresarios que hablaron conmigo, que no tengo por qué revelar mis fuentes, porque yo estoy haciendo un libre ejercicio del periodismo y siendo muy valiente al alzar la voz de los guatemaltecos y extranjeros que vivimos aquí, de la manera que hemos estado siendo torturados y perseguidos judicialmente por las familias poderosas que achichinclan a CICIG y a todos sus personeros, que se hacen llamar Frente Anticorrupción, pero que son el digno ejemplo de la corrupción en pleno, persiguiendo a gente inocente que no se presta a pagar la fafa, a pagar la extorsión, a depositarla en una ONG en Estados Unidos. Esto, señores, no es justicia. Esto es someter de pies a cabeza a toda una nación y esto tiene que terminar. Yo insto a los empresarios que lo dicen a mi oído, que tengan la valentía de levantarse y aunque hayan ya hecho estos depósitos en estas ONGs en Estados Unidos, digan la verdad y pierdan el miedo, porque hay que liberar a esta nación y hay que dejar de llamar a lo bueno malo y a lo malo bueno. Gracias por habernos acompañado, gracias licenciada Sandoval. Yo me voy a ir a una breve pausa y regreso enseguida.